So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here at Ukraine Media Center. We work here in Kyiv helping foreign journalists in their work in Ukraine. Also, we run briefings, press briefings on subjects of interest to Ukrainian media and foreign media. And today, we will have two briefings. The first one will be by an expert, and we'll continue it now. That's consolidated briefing by experts initiated by the Center for Defense Strategies about security and economic situation, as well as military threats in Black and Azov Sea after 1 month of full-scale war that the Russian Federation has been conducting in Ukraine. And it's to start right now. Our second briefing will start at 2 p.m., and that second briefing will be about defense of Kyiv and Kyiv province, and the speaker there will be Brigadier General, Deputy Chief of General Staff of Land Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Ryzhenko. All our broadcasts, all our briefings are broadcasted in our YouTube channel and in our Telegram channel. We provide some summary of news or key statements by our speakers, so you're welcome to subscribe to our channels. So we are to start our briefing about the security situation, economic situation, military threats in Black Sea and Sea of Azov after 1 month of full-scale war, the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine. I'm Alina Frolova, and I'm Deputy Head of Center for Defense Strategies, an independent think tank. I used to be a Minister of Defense of Ukraine in 2019-2020. Andriy Ryzhenko is an expert from Center of Defense Strategies, first-rank captain, reserve of Ukrainian Navy of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Andriy Klymenko, head of Black Sea Strategic Studies Institute and editor-in-chief of Black Sea News publication. And Mykhailo Honchar, president for Center for Globalism and Strategies 21st Century, editor-in-chief of Black Sea Security magazine. So I'm to start this press briefing. I will make some brief introduction, and then I will give the floor to each of our experts, and maybe we'll ask for some clarification. So basically about the threats on Black Sea and Sea of Azov, many experts discussed such threat within the context of the illegal occupation of Crimea. After the launch of the Crimea platform, which was launched 1 year ago, there was a separate track there about security and defense, including the matters of Black Sea and Sea of Azov, because we believe that occupation is not just about Crimea as such, but it's also about Black Sea and Sea of Azov. Those threats, those dangers in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov, as we understand, have been caused by the Russian Federation, and they were increasing, and partially that increase was about the lack of clear standing of Western countries, which are not Black Sea countries, about Russia increasing their military presence in Crimea, using Crimea as their base, and in the Black Sea. I'd like to remind you that in Black Sea and Sea of Azov, there have been the movement of commercial vessels was blocked every now and then. There were threats against civilian vessels and aircraft, ships and aircraft. There was Ukrainian gas stolen by the continental shelf, and from time to time access to Ukrainian ports was blocked. And basically, we believe that one of the factors which, as I mentioned, contributed to the development of that insecurity of Black Sea and Sea of Azov was about the lack of strategic position, strategic standing of NATO in that region. Even though among Black Sea countries there are some countries which are NATO members, NATO allies. What we see now is also a situation that was forecasted by experts, who said that if there was a full-scale aggression of Russia against Ukraine, Russia would try to take full control of Sea of Azov, including Ukrainian coast and Ukrainian coast of the Black Sea, because these are strategically important locations for the economy of Ukraine, for its exports, for exports of food and non-food items. Now Russia has blocked fully blocked economic activity there. And global experts already say that a crisis is expected because of because it's impossible to transport food, including grain, which may result in hunger and economic problems on the global scale. So now we are to discuss comprehensively the security in Black Sea and Sea of Azov. What can we do in this situation? What is the current situation? Unfortunately, yesterday, after the NATO meeting, of NATO summit yesterday, we have not heard any clear position of NATO, how NATO as an alliance would respond to this existing configuration that has appeared in Black Sea. Let's remember that those threats from the Black Sea and Sea of Azov are projected to the Mediterranean Sea and affect a much broader region. Now I'm to give the floor to Andriy Ryzhenko. He will be able to comment on the military aspect of what's going on, and he will share his view as an expert about those events and possible developments. Andriy, you're welcome. Good afternoon. In the Black Sea, during 1 month, there have been active combat operations. There is a war on sea, and by February 23 this year, Russian Federation concentrated about 45 battleships and boats in Black Sea, from Black Sea Fleet, Northern Fleet, and Caspian Fleet. I'd like to remind that from Baltic Sea and Northern Sea, they brought about 60% of their big landing ships, and the total number of big landing ships has amounted to 11. And then they were split into 2 tactical groups. One of those operating in the Black Sea, having 7 ships, and the other one in the Sea of Azov. In both cases, those landing ships were covered by fire support from other ships, fire support ships, and they were operating in that form until yesterday. Armed forces of Ukraine made a rocket strike on the port of Berdyansk when 4 Russian landing ships were being unloaded there. So at least one of those has been fully destroyed. One of them has been broken to a very serious extent, and 2 other ships have also been damaged. And so the landing group, which was operating in the Sea of Azov, has been inoperable for some time. Now it cannot operate. But the other group of 7 landing ships and up to 10 other ships operating in the Black Sea has been between Crimean Peninsula and Odessa, Zatoka coast, and from time to time it checks whether our troops are ready about landing. They will only be able to land if they take Mykolaiv, but Mykolaiv has been defending very fiercely, very resilient, in a very resilient way, and that landing would only make sense if it's supported from the ground. And that's about eastern direction. It's about Mykolaiv area, Russian troops in Mykolaiv area, and Transnistria from Dnistro from northwestern part. Also, since the beginning of the war, Russia has brought about 20 ships and vessels from Pacific Fleet and Northern Fleet, including 2 1164 project cruises to the Mediterranean. And Turkey has been acting in a very positive way. They just blocked those straits, Black Sea straits, in accordance with Montreal Convention. So those ships have been unable to arrive to the Black Sea to support the Russian troops there, which has helped us very seriously in defending Odessa and Mykolaiv, because those ships are practically every day making artillery strikes against Odessa and other ports in Black Sea region. But in the Sea of Azov, until yesterday, it's known that they were making rocket strikes. They have systems similar to ground multiple launch systems, to Grad systems. They have similar systems in their ships. So the main assignments, the main tasks for the Russian Federation fleet could be split into three categories in Black Sea and Black Sea as well. First of all, blocking ports and bases, Ukrainian ports and bases. So practically, actually, all ports have been blocked. If civilian ships try to access Ukrainian ports in Black Sea, they were fired without any warning, with artillery strikes or rockets, and it's known that at least one ship under Panama flag was sunk near Odessa. Also, they act against Ukrainian ships. There is not a lot of those, but they still go to the sea to control the sea. And all the time, a Russian Federation hunts those Ukrainian ships and uses weapons against them. The second category is countering, as basically this, countering Ukrainian Navy in the sea, but they are afraid of coming closer than 5 sea miles, because our coast artillery immediately gets engaged, and then it makes artillery strikes, it strikes. And it's known, it has not been finally confirmed, but we know that at least 2 ships of Russian Federation were damaged by our coast artillery, and 1 Russian ship has been damaged because of a strike by multiple launch rocket system. And the third task, the third category, is about landing. Maybe that's their main task. There was a plan to land in the Sea of Azov, but they dropped it because quite quickly they took the ports of Genichisk and Berdyansk, but then they reformatted that group for logistics through the port of Berdyansk. Berdyansk has a very advantageous location in Sea of Azov between Genichisk and Mariupol, so cargoes were brought there and enemy's troops were brought there, but they are not being brought there anymore now. In the Black Sea, landing is still a possibility, an intriguing possibility. There have already been 3 attempts. Now the Russians are not trying to do it. I already mentioned the main reason. They need some support from the ground. And we know that those units, which by the end of February were on those ships, have been on the ground since long ago. They have been transferred to Mariupol, Brigade 810, of Russian Marines, and they incurred big losses near Mykolaiv, near Mykolaiv, and Mariupol, and they incurred big losses near Mykolaiv. So now the situation is as follows: in Black Sea, we control the key ports, including Odessa, Pivdenny, Chernomorsk, Achakiv, and Mykolaiv. So virtually all ports, but civilian seafarer cannot take place because of threats from Russian Federation. They destroy ships by artillery and rockets. Also, recently, there was a fake disseminated by a captain of Sochi port, whereby allegedly in the northwestern part there see mines, a lot of those. That's absurd, because, 420 mines, they cannot be taken from their anchors and be just moving there in that part. There has been information that Romanian Navy tried to look for mines and they haven't found anything. But now there has been some information that allegedly the Russians try to send those ships which are in Ukrainian ports through so-called Green Corridor. That cannot be done, because most probably there will be some provocation, and some of those ships would be destroyed. When the Russians say that allegedly there are some mine there, so it cannot be done. That Green Corridor cannot be used, and also the Turkish Navy confirmed that there is a mine threat. Now the defense of Odessa continues, defense of Mykolaiv continues, and combat action in the city of Mariupol continues, which is the last port in the Sea of Azov. In the last 3 weeks, the city of Mariupol has been defending under complete siege. It has been defended by the Ukrainian Marines and Azov Regiment of the National Guard. And they're very brave, very courageous, self-sacrificing and creative. But a difficult situation, but Mariupol is still defending. The key needs of Ukrainian Navy are as follows. They need to take control of that part of the sea, and it's about artillery. But in terms of support, we know that there are some items which would significantly increase the capability of our Navy. That's the situation as of today. Thank you, Andriy. So that was Andriy Klymenko. Now I'd like to give the floor to you and to hear your views, especially take into account that your group, Now about the situation in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. Andriy, can you hear us? Can you hear us? So we seem to have some problem. While we are reconnecting, I'd like to tell you that the group led by Andriy Klymenko monitors and gathers data, collects data to be able to analyze the trends in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov, like its economic impact, blocking of ships, movement of Russian warships and battleships, and all other data about security situation in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. About the northwestern part of the Black Sea, Andriy, I'm sorry, could you please repeat? Andriy, could you please repeat? Can you hear me? Could you please repeat from the very beginning, because we had a technical problem. So please repeat again from the very beginning. Thank you. Okay, then. So welcome, everybody. On the 24th of February, that is to say, on the very first day, a wide-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, Russian Federation issued a warning whereby it completely blocked the Sea of Azov for ships with Ukrainian ports, and the traffic of Russian ships through Kerch Strait to Russian ports in the Sea of Azov continues, and it continues actively even now. And the Russian Federation has also blocked the northwestern part of the Black Sea from Zmyne Island to the north. So that's approaches to all Russian ports, Ukrainian ports, in the Black Sea, because of so-called special military operation. By that time and until now, in Black Sea ports, according to our calculations, there have been at least 64 foreign ships there, while in the Sea of Azov, in the port of Mariupol, there are 6 foreign ships, while in the port of Berdyansk, until the 15th of March, there were 5 foreign ships. From the port of Berdyansk on the 15th of March, Russian fleet expelled those civilian ships, pushed them out of the port of Berdyansk in order to provide that port of Berdyansk as a logistical hub to supply the Russian troops in Zaporizhia and Donetsk provinces. That's what our colleague already mentioned. Now, after those ships spent almost 10 days at the entry to Kerch Strait from the Sea of Azov, reached the Black Sea, and now they're moving there, and we hope that they will reach their respective destinations. All the other ships remain there in Black Sea ports. And I would like to mention the following. Yesterday, the Russian Federation, its Ministry of Defense, announced the creation from the morning till this evening, tonight, of so-called humanitarian corridor, so that those cargo ships from Ukrainian ports in the Black Sea would be able to leave them and go to their home bases. In fact, this is a very cynical thing, because it is well known that, as my colleague Ryzhenko mentioned, there have been combat operations in the Black Sea, and at least 5 commercial vessels have been damaged because of rockets and artillery shells, and at least 1 ship sank, and there are deaths and wounded seamen on those ships, among foreigners there. And finally, there have been those messages about mines in the Black Sea. I'd like to add something. On the 19th of March this year, Ukrainian Navy issued the warning which said that the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation has installed mines in the area of Black Sea around the Dunai, the orifice of Dunai, the only way from Ukraine to the west, and mines around the island, Zminy Island, where is the route from Bosphorus Strait to Ukraine's Black Sea ports. And that was used as a fake operation, humanitarian action, which should have the following goals. First, if in the Black Sea there is actually any mine threat, mine danger, then it should be eliminated. So an international group of those ships of minesweepers should be brought to the Black Sea. We have them in Turkey and Ukraine, and those minesweeper ships should be covered from the sea and from the air, because it's not a secret that from the Black Sea and from the air above the Black Sea, Russian Federation has been sending rockets to the territory of Ukraine, not only to the coastal cities, but also to remote cities and towns, to Lviv province, Rivne province, and other provinces of Ukraine. So it should stop. And finally, those minesweepers, that minesweeper vessel group for humanitarian operations, should be covered from the air side. Another goal, another objective to be implemented within this humanitarian action is a recovery of sea traffic from ports of Odessa region. The matter is this: in those ports in Odessa region, there has been a lot of grain, and that's precisely the grain discussed by the whole world, saying that when there is a lack of exports of grain from Ukraine, it will result in a food crisis, at least in African countries, which are the key buyers of that grain. And another problem that I would like to draw your attention to is this. In this situation, in these circumstances, active sea traffic continues to export Russian oil, crude oil from Russian Black Sea ports to European countries. In 10 days alone, since March 14 to March 24, through Turkish straits, 77 tankers passed them with Russian crude oil, and they have transported 4,400,000 tons of Russian crude oil, 4.4 million tons of crude oil. And the total of this oil amounts to 440 caliber cruise missiles. So this is a blooded crude oil. That's about an opportunity for the Russian Federation to finance continuation of missile strikes against Ukraine. It should stop immediately. I'd like to note that the destination ports of those tanker ships include Rotterdam, French ports, and Italian ones. So we would like to ask the international community to request that this bloody export of Russian oil should stop, of Russian crude oil. And the last thing, in order to implement this international naval humanitarian operation in Black Sea, it should be requested that the Russian Federation should stop military action in the Black Sea, and ships of the Black Sea Fleet and other fleets should be removed from those areas mentioned by Captain Ryzhenko, because otherwise it would result in crisis not only in the Ukrainian economy, and it has already resulted in such crisis, but it will also result in that food crisis which I described, and it will also result in losses among foreign ships, among the crews on those ships, and only after, and only in that case, foreign ships can be taken out of Ukraine, can be removed, can move from Ukrainian ports. Otherwise, Ukraine cannot undertake the responsibility for safe passage of foreign ships from Ukrainian ports. Thank you. Thank you, Andriy. Now, Mykhailo, you're welcome to share your position, and if you could cover also the economic component and the energy component, because you're also an expert on those subjects. Thank you, Alina. Welcome, dear colleagues. I will start precisely with general economic situation. For Western media try to understand what has been happening and what will happen, and they made some collusion that speaking about Ukrainian Black Sea ports, it's about the economic war by Russia, and stopping a normal trade will not only deprive Ukraine of resources to support its military efforts, but will also result for losses for each country worldwide, direct or indirect losses. That's not any overestimation. Ports around Black Sea and Sea of Azov are used for about 75% of Ukrainian exports of grains. Ukraine has been supplying, accounting for 13% of the global amount of corn, and about the same for wheat, which means that failures of problems with trade in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov, Ukraine, may result in food problems worldwide. Ukrainian ports also account for 80% of exports. Sorry, couldn't hear. So that's a statement which is widespread by now, and we see news from various countries that from Zimbabwe about grain problems, from Bulgaria about problems with seed oil, and those problems will only be increasing, and they need some response not only from countries in the Black Sea region, but also, as my colleagues noted, we need some immediate action to eliminate to neutralize the consequences of that Russian activity and to block that activity. And the Black Sea also plays an important role about transportation, about energy, and also this region is in the initial stage of using offshore resources in the Black Sea. I mean the energy resources, energy deposits, first of all, natural gas. I'd like to remind you some story of 8 years old. Often we forget about those events in 2014, but if we think about them now, if you think about the motives of Russian aggression against Ukraine, among a number of other reasons, not the but not least one is about the energy, namely countering the implementation of several mega projects initiated by the government of Ukraine in early 2010s, with the involvement of leading US and European oil and gas companies. I mean the development of Black Sea resources, including that Skifska area, where there was tender and consortium led by ExxonMobil, and including Netherlandian Shell and Petrol, Ukrainian subsidiary, won in that tender. And that was a mega project, and if successful, it would bring huge volumes of natural gas to the Ukrainian market, which would make it unnecessary to import natural gas from Russia. Jointly with two other big projects which were being implemented or started in Ukraine, Yuzivska area in Kharkiv and Donetsk Oblast, for non-conventional gas, and also in western Ukraine there is that area where Chevron, a U.S. company, would develop non-conventional natural gas deposits. Altogether, it would make it possible for Ukraine not only satisfy its needs in natural gas, but also Ukraine could become an exporter for Central and Eastern Europe. And in Moscow, they treated it as a threat for Russia's leading oil and gas companies. First of all, Gazprom, about their interests in European and Ukrainian oil and gas market. So with occupation and illegal annexation of Crimean Peninsula and taking the development assets and property and those platforms in the northwestern part of the Black Sea, Russia has created unacceptable risks for those projects involving leading U.S. and European oil and gas companies. So they stopped those projects, implementation of those projects. In 2020 and 21, discussions started whereby even with this occupation and control of development assets between the Crimean Peninsula and Odessa, even though Russia has been controlling that part, Naftogaz of Ukraine, Ukrainian state-run oil and gas company, started preparations for new projects to be launched, at least one project which would include Western partners in order to restore development on the Sea Shelf. Also, that active shelf project continued in another sector of the Black Sea, and it brought some positive results, making it almost self-sufficient. And last year, in the Romanian sector, and last year, in the Turkish sector of the Black Sea, close to Bulgarian and Romanian sector, some deposits have been identified. The largest gas deposit with reserve exceeding 320 billion cubic meters, more than 320 BCM. And it became a shock for Russia because they realized that the Black Sea can now really become, if not the new Northern Sea, then maybe a new Caspian Sea. I'd like to remind you that in the Romanian sector of the Black Sea, that deposit has about 70 billion cubic meters deposits, and in Turkish sector they have 4 times more. In the Ukrainian sector, the development started as early as in 1970s, and if not for Russian occupation of Crimea and taking of our assets there, then currently in the Black Sea Shelf we would be producing at least 5 BCM annually, 5 or even 8 billion cubic meters annually. These were our plans. And just to compare, I would mention that now we have been consuming about 30-something BCMs of natural gas annually. So we produce about 5. So the production of about 5 BCM is a significant contribution to our natural gas balance. So obviously those plans, of course, those plans were supported with 2 modern drilling platforms made in Singapore in early 2010s, and now it has become impossible. So about 15 billion cubic meters of natural gas during this time of illegal occupation has been, we say, stolen by the Russian Federation from the Ukrainian sector of the Black Sea Shelf. 15 billion cubic meters, 15 BCM, has been stolen by Russia. So now back to the motives for this new way, for this direct military aggression by Russia. So the energy motive is not the least in that list, because Russia does not want to see any additional production, gas-producing projects in Black Sea. So it also creates threats for the Armenian sector, because Ukrainian and Romanian sectors are bordering each other, and I cannot exclude a scenario whereby some of those Ukrainian mines, as aggressors name them, allegedly leaving their anchors, may all of a sudden, in quotation marks, reach the Romanian sector precisely near those production assets of petrol company. In the same way, I believe that Russia has also been projecting those threats for Turkey in developing its deposit, which, according to President Erdogan, Turkey wants to quickly develop it in the next couple of years. So in that way, Russia wants to demonstrate that the Black Sea is like a Russian area. So in no situation should we allow the escalation model development. It was completely predictable, and Center for Defense Study and Center for Black Sea Strategic Studies predicted it, and also within our cooperation between our Center and Center of Defense Strategies, we were completing our analysis right 1 week before the Russian invasion started, and we were clearly stating that there would be those negative scenarios which one would see within that context. Mykhailo, yeah, we have been running out of time, so I'd like to thank you for this exhaustive explanation. Now we'll collect the questions, and maybe we'll briefly finish our briefing. You're welcome. Slava Ukraini.
In 2014, the enemy took possession of our natural gas and oil resources. This is my first question. Do we have a plan to reclaim and take back those resources once we have won this conflict? And my second question is, I noticed after living in Ukraine for 3 years that there was a significant loss of gas resources due to inefficient and ill-maintained infrastructure. What plans are there to enhance the gas delivery infrastructure in Ukraine to a modern standard so we don't actually have losses of this resource?
That's a question probably not about the Black Sea as such, so I will briefly answer that one, because I believe that whatever is about infrastructure in general, we cannot even assess the losses here because of what's going on in the whole Ukraine about infrastructural losses. Lost infrastructure. And after the end of this war, the Ukrainian government declared that there will be mass-scale recovery of infrastructure. I believe that it will also include the energy sector, including the household energy sector. And our question for our experts is, do you know anything, do you have any data about Ukraine's intentions to bring a lawsuit about that stolen natural gas, stolen resources lost over all those years of occupation, including this current period? Is anybody ready to answer? Mykhailo? Yes. This process is going on, and I have to say that, yes, the Naftogaz of Ukraine company has responded properly, immediately, and such lawsuits have been submitted, and they are separately stated, both from Naftogaz of Ukraine and also in that lawsuit submitted by Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian nation, there are also certain positions. Another thing is that when we take into account the procedures and regulations in various international courts and courts of arbitration, it takes years and years and many years. So this process is going on, but we should also say that this process has to be forced by proper efforts, because the precedent created by Russia in the northwestern sector of the sea has no similarities. It can be qualified as some piracy on the one hand, but on the other hand, from international view perspective, there are different interpretations. So this is a long-term process. Now we need efforts to push the aggressor away, to force the aggressor to leave, to get back to status quo that we had before the war. Because when we just use that UN Convention on International Law of the Sea or other regulations and procedures of international courts, it will not help us, because they are just ignoring the international law. Thank you, thank you. I would like to ask the last question for Andriy Ryzhenko and for Andriy Klymenko. Do you see any possible action to be taken which would stabilize the situation or would affect, which would reduce the risks, mitigate the risks in the Black Sea, other than creation that anti-mine humanitarian group, humanitarian mission? What else can be done by the international community, by alliances, by Black Sea countries, in order to at least stabilize the situation in a very short time frame? Literally 1 minute for each of you, and we are to finish our press briefing. Andriy Ryzhenko, you're welcome. First of all, about recovery of renewal of Ukraine's sovereignty over its territories in the Black Sea area and sovereignty over the sea. That's the responsibility of Ukraine. We have been told unambiguously that Ukraine has to restore its sovereignty. I think it's about operational planning for our general staff, and that's a confidential matter. We do have some opportunities to strike the enemy, and yesterday we saw it. And now I think it's very important that our partners should supply us with those weapons that we need. And that would change in a very serious way the balance of forces in the Black Sea areas too. This month has shown that it's very effective. It's about the air combat and about fighting the armored vehicles. We just need to add that component, the sea component, and I think that we'll see it very visually. We can do it. Again, yesterday we saw it. Now I get some I see information that Russians have been bringing 4 other items, 2 ships and 2 boats to the Black Sea, but those would not replace what has been damaged yesterday. Andriy Klymenko, thank you. Andriy Klymenko. First of all, I would like all our foreign colleagues who can hear us now, I'd like to them to understand that now the Black Sea is a combat theater, military theater. So any issues, any questions of lawsuits about the gas infrastructure and all that look naive now. We have to win first in this war, and after that we will bring lawsuits within the total assessment of total losses caused for Ukraine by the Russian Federation. Second, what can we do immediately in order to force Russia to change their behavior in the Black Sea? You have to stop service Russian tankers with Russian crude oil in foreign ports. It should stop, like it has been done in the UK and some other countries. Even before there have been any decisions by governments, those bloody Russian exports should stop. Otherwise, that civilized world with all its values will continue watching how Russian Federation has been destroying Ukraine, be it in on the front line or in some remote areas. And it will be going on like it was going on yesterday and the day before yesterday. 8 caliber missiles have hit Rivne province. Those are caliber missiles which I mentioned when I counted the value of Russian bloody crude oil. Every 100,000 of Russian crude oil, bloody oil, is 10 caliber missiles. They were used the day before yesterday, and today, and tomorrow they will be used to hit us. Thank you, thank you. I, on my behalf, would like to add that we expect that NATO and the European Union will start treating the Black Sea as the priority area for defense, and they will take their position about countering Russian aggression going on at the moment, and there will be some reaction to that threat for those Black Sea NATO allies like Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania. And also in the future, NATO will understand that in order to have that detention strategy in Europe, Black Sea and Black Sea area is a decisive component. I'd like to thank everybody and to thank the journalists. Please stay here for our second briefing about the defense of Kyiv. Thank you.